Hello friends, I hope you all are doing well and staying safe at your own place. I, C.A. Pujin Kapadia, welcome you all on my today's lecture on the subject Indian Contract Act 1872. We are studying the topic of consideration. We have started the same in the last lecture and we are going to continue with the same in this current lecture. What we have studied till date was the definition of consideration, under which I had laid focus on three important points. First was when it is at the desire of the promiser, that is the person who is making the promise is desiring something in written. It is being received from whom? Either from the promisee or any other person. So there can be the third party to consideration. Now consideration can be either in past tense or in present tense or in future tense. So your activity can be past, it can be present, or it can be future. So anything that is something in written is known as consideration, defined in section 2 clause D. Then we had taken up the legal rules as regard to consideration, under which the first one was it must move at the desire of promiser. That is, promiser is requiring that he needs something in written. For example, I have given you that when I was proposing venture capitalist to invest in my company, and when venture capitalist is agreeing to invest in my company, he will ask that what he is going to get in return. I'll say, sir, I'm offering you 50% share in my profit. So this is something which is consideration. Fine. So it is at the desire of the promiser, that is venture capitalist who has done the promise. And second point is it is moving from whom? So it may move from promisee, that is me in our example, or from any other person. So basically the last line is important. Stranger to consideration can also sue to enforce the contract. So it is not necessary that only promisee can pay the consideration. Consideration can also be enforced by any other party who may not necessarily be primarily the party to the contract. Third part was it may be past, present, and future. Past is basically the activity is done before making the promise. Present is basically both are taking place simultaneously, and future is both are taking place at some future date. That is past, present, or executed, and third is future or executed. Next was there need not to be adequate. So basically what law requires is there should be consideration. Consideration must exist, but how much, that is not the matter of law. Fine. So you can have a consideration which can be less, which can be more, none of your concern. What is the matter of concern is there should be consideration. So consideration must exist. That is it. Next is it must be real. It should not be illusory. That is, some examples I've written over here is physical impossibility, legal impossibility, or paying consideration for something which is your existing public duty. Now, this all are the activities which are not real consideration. Fine. So basically, if you are getting something for doing something more than what you were supposed to do, then it can be considered as a good consideration. But you are getting only for something that you already is your duty. Like I have given you the example over here. You can see my cursor. Mr. A promises to pay certain sum of money to Judge J to give the judgment. Now it is already the duty of the judge to give the judgment, and now again you are paying consideration for the same, and it is not going to be considered as a good consideration. And the last was your consideration should not be illegal, it should not be immoral, or it should not be opposed to public policy. So basically your consideration should be valid, it should not be falling under any of these points. I hope I am clear with these points. Okay, so let's start with the new question. The topic for the day is privity of contract, which means a stranger to a contract cannot sue for the contract. Now let's understand what is the general rule under this. A general rule says a contract is a private relationship between parties who make it. The rights and obligations under such a contract are strictly confined to them. This is known as doctrine of privity of contract. What this point tries to say is a contract is a private relationship between whom? Between the parties who are making the contract. So the rights and obligations are amongst the parties who are to the contract. They are not involving any third party basically. So all these rights and obligations are strictly confined to. They are limited to only to the parties who are making the contract. So this concept is known as doctrine of privity of contract, which says the privacy into contract. That is, only the parties who are the part of the contract can only have the rights and obligations against each other. no third party, that is the party who is not a part of a contract, cannot come into existence to exercise any kind of right or obligation. So what I have written over here in the second point is, so a stranger to a contract cannot sue for the same. The most important thing that we need to remember over here. So whensoever, suppose Mr. A and Mr. B are entering into a contract, then only they two can sue each other. Mr. C cannot come in between and ask for the enforcement of the contract. So this is something, this is a general rule as to privity of contract. However, we had already studied the third point, that a stranger to consideration can sue for the same. So basically, if it is a matter of consideration, there can be a stranger. But when it comes to a contract, there cannot be the stranger. Now, I have given you the example. I'm just taking you back so that you can clear out that particular point. This slide. In this particular example, we had understand that the daughter of A has received certain property from A, and she has entered into the agreement with you, who was her uncle, to pay him annuity, that is some lump sum amount on yearly basis. Later on, the daughter refused to pay the annuity on the contention that she has not received any consideration from the uncle. So what was the daughter's contention? That she will not be paying the annuity. Why? Because she has not received any consideration from the uncle. Now, what was her point was that if she has not received anything, then why should she pay the consideration? But it was held, though daughter has not received the consideration from the uncle, but at the same time, she has received the consideration from Mr. A. Now, Mr. A was not basically the part of the promise between daughter and the uncle. But since she has received the consideration from her father A, who is basically a stranger to this particular promise, though the contract is enforceable. So what I want to say from this point is, a stranger to a contract cannot sue for the same, but however, a stranger to a consideration can sue for the same. I hope I'm clear with this. So I have given you two examples. For this, I have said that if a contract is between A and B, then only these two parties can sue each other for their rights and obligation. Mr. C cannot come in between and sue for the same. So basically, stranger to a contract cannot sue for the same. But however, the example we looked into of daughter, uncle and father, though the promise was between daughter and uncle, but since the consideration was received from the third party, the stranger, the father, he can sue for the same. I hope I'm clear with this particular slide of general rule of privity to contract. However, there are certain exceptions to the general rule. Exceptions basically talk about, like I told you the example, that if a contract has been entered between A and B, C cannot come in between for the enforcement. But these are the certain examples where the third person, where the stranger are having the right to enforce the contract. So the things that we are going to cover now are basically the exceptions to the general rule of privity to contract. Let's start with the first one. In case of beneficiaries, in case of trust. Now directly I have stated an example so that it will be clearer to you to understand. Mr. A agrees to transfer certain property to Mr. B to be held in trust for the benefit of C. Here, C can enforce the agreement though he is not a party to a contract. What I have written over here is, there are two parties to a contract, that is Mr. A and Mr. B. What A has done is, he has agreed to transfer certain property to B. Now, what is the purpose of this transfer? To be held in trust for the benefit of the third person. Who is the third person? C. So basically the contract is between A and B. However, since it was held in trust for the benefit of C, so C was the beneficiary. And in this particular case, this is an exception. So C can enforce the agreement, though he was not directly the party to the contract. So the first point of the exception says, if you are beneficiary in case of trust, then you are having a right to enforce the particular contract. Second point is marriage settlement, partition, or any other family arrangements. Now here I have taken an example of marriage. A's father entered into agreement for her marriage with Mr. B. She was minor at the time of agreement. So basically what is the scenario over here? Daughter, that is A, whose father has entered into agreement with Mr. B for the marriage of A. At that particular point of time, she was minor at the time of agreement. It was held that A, after attaining the majority, that is once she becomes major, could sue B for damages for breach of promise of damage. So if B is not agreeing in future to getting married with A, then A is having due right that though she was not the direct party to a contract, who are the direct parties? A's father and Mr. B. However, since it was a marriage settlement, she has a right to claim for the damages. I hope I am clear with the two exceptions. So the first exception was if you are a beneficiary in case of trust. Second is if there is a case of any marriage settlement or partition or any other family arrangements. Let's move to the third part. The third point says acknowledgement or estoppel. Let's understand this particular point. Mr. A receives some money from Mr. B to be paid over to Mr. C. So basically the parties to contract are again A and B. What is the transaction? A is receiving some money from whom? From B. But why he is receiving? It is supposed to be paid over to Mr. C. Now A is admitting of his receipts to C. A has told C that he has received money from B. C can recover the amount from A, who shall be regarded as the agent of C. Now, first of all, let me make you clear what is estoppel. Estoppel is basically the person who by his act or by his conduct proves that he is acting on behalf of someone else. So basically in this particular case, A can be termed as the estoppel for C. Now what A has done? A has received money from B that he is going to pay it to C. Fine. So actually the money was payable to C, but as of now it is being received by A. So the transaction is between A and B. A has acknowledgement the receipt that he has received. He has acknowledged to C that he has received the money. Now C, though he was not a direct party to a contract, can recover the amount from A, who shall be regarded as his agent. Fine. Okay. The next point is assignment of contract. When assignment takes place, assignment is basically legally transfer of some property from one person to another. So when assignment takes place under operation of law, that is under any law, assignee can sue on the contract. It is the person who has received or who is basically in the possession of that particular thing. He has a right to sue on a contract. I have taken an example over here. When a person is adjudged as insolvent, his property vests with the official assignee. First of all, let me make you clear that whenever any person declares himself as insolvent, I hope you are clear with what is insolvent. Fine. When your personal assets are not sufficient enough to pay off your liabilities, then you declare yourself as insolvent. That you are declaring your incapability to pay off your liabilities. Now, in this particular case, sometimes courts or under any law, official assignee is appointed. Now, who is official assignee? He is a person who is basically going to take care of all your assets. He is going to liquidate all your assets and he is going to settle your liabilities. So basically now what is the case over here? All your assets, all your properties are being vested with official assignee. Now though official assignee was not directly into touch or was not directly into the party to the contract, he has a right to sue upon the contract entered into by him. So basically what is the case over here? Primarily the contract was between the insolvent person and the party, fine, between them. But now who is coming into the picture due to assignment? Official assignee. So though official assignee was not the initial party to the contract, he is having the right to enforce the contract. So basically this is the example of assignment of contract, wherein official assignee was not initially the party to contract. So as per our rule, he is a stranger to the contract, so he cannot sue. But in this particular case, since it is an exception, he is having or holding the property on behalf of that insolvent person, and he has to settle off the liabilities of that person. So whatsoever contracts are being entered by to the insolvent person, official assignee is having the right to sue or enforce that particular contracts. I hope I'm clear with these 4 points. I would just request you to take a quick view on all those 4 points. First of all, take a look at this particular slide, friends. Well, take a look at point number 3 and point number 4. Well, I hope you are clear with all the 4 points of exceptions. Let's move to the fifth one. The contracts which are entered into through an agent. So basically now the concept comes of principal and agent. What is written over here? Let's read it out. The principal can enforce the contracts entered into by an agent provided agents act within the scope of his authority and in name of principal during the course of business. So basically in this point, what we are trying to understand is, first of all, we are talking about the agent principal relationship. Now you all know that basically agent is the person who is carrying on the business on behalf of the principal. So is acting on behalf of the principal. So primarily there are two conditions over here. First is agent should be acting within the scope of his authority, that he should be exercising only those powers which are vested to him or which are given to him by the principal. That is our first point. Second point is he should be acting in name of principal during the course of the business. So he's not representing himself, he's representing his principal. Now if both these two conditions have been satisfied, who are the primarily parties to contract? It would be the agent and the person with whom he is dealing with. But principal is going to be the stranger to that particular contract apparently. But if these conditions are satisfied, that principal, even though not being the direct party to the contract, has the right to enforce the contract. So again, this is your exception, that stranger can enforce the contract. I hope I'm clear with this point. Yes? Okay. Sixth point, a charge on immovable property. Let's read it so that you can get an idea what I want to say over here. A charge created on a specific immovable property in favor of a certain person can be enforced by such person. Basically, I'm talking about two things over here. First thing is charge and second thing is immovable property. Now, whenever you are possessing or having any immovable property in your name, in your ownership, and if there is any charge, for example, I have written over here, I am having a home loan which is being funded from XYZ bank. Now I can say that I am having the property in my own name, but on this particular property, I have taken the loan, as a result of which XYZ bank has created the charge. That is, XYZ bank has provided me the loan. So this is basically the asset that I had provided as a security, that till the time I am not repaying all my debt, this asset belongs to XYZ bank. So basically, though the property belongs to me, so the transaction has been done between me and the seller of the property. However, the charge was being created on this specific immobile property in favor of certain person. In our example, XYZ bank. So XYZ bank is having the power that in any case of default, it can sell this particular property or do the necessary actions, take the necessary actions with respect to same. So again, though XYZ bank was not directly the party to the contract, still being a stranger, as it was charge created on this particular property, it is having full right to act on our behalf. So I hope with this, I am clear with this entire topic of privity of contract. So let's recall what we have studied today. The topic is privity of contract, which basically talks about a stranger to a contract cannot sue for the contract. As I have explained you what is a general rule, the contract is entered into by the parties to contract. So for example, there are two parties, party A and party B. Then the contract is supposed to be enforced by only these two people. Mr. C, who is not a party to a contract, is having no power to enforce the contract. As a result of which I have written over here, a stranger to a contract cannot sue for the same. However, if a stranger to a consideration can sue for the same. As I have given you the example, the contract entered, the promise entered between the daughter and the uncle. The daughter is going to pay the annuity, that is every year she is going to pay some amount to the uncle. But then after she is telling, she is having a point that why I should pay to my uncle, because I have not received anything as a consideration from my uncle. But what the court held was, daughter had received consideration from her father, as a result of which she was liable to pay to the uncle. Now, father was the third person. He was not directly the part to the promise. However, he is having the right to enforce the particular contract. So, if you are a stranger to a consideration, you can sue for the enforcement of the contract. So, just make it clear, friends, stranger to a contract cannot sue for its enforcement, but stranger to a consideration can sue for its enforcement. But we had studied 6 exceptions to these basic rules. First is beneficiaries in case of trust. That is, if you are a beneficiary in case of trust, then you are having a part to sue for the contract, though you are not the direct party to a contract. Second was marriage settlement, partition, or other family arrangements, under which I have told you that A's father has entered in a contract with Mr. B that they are going to have a marriage. But afterwards, what happened? On attaining majority, Mr. B is saying no. In this particular case, A, who was minor at that point of time, but now she is major, is having the right, though she was not directly the party to a contract, to sue for the damages. So basically, second exception is marriage settlement, partition, or other family arrangements. Third is acknowledgement or estoppel. Estoppel means I have cleared you out that any person who is acting, that he is basically acting as an agent on behalf of some another person. So by his act or by his express commitment, he is saying that he is acting for someone else. In which we have taken an example, Mr. A received some money from Mr. B to be paid over to C. And in this particular case, A is admitting the receipt, acknowledging the receipt to C. C can recover the amount, though he was not the direct party to the contract. So basically, this is the case of acknowledgement or estoppel. Next point is assignment of contract, under which I had explained you. Whenever under any operation of law, that is legally, whenever your property is going from you to the assignee. Now, as I told you the example of insolvent. In insolvency, what happens is official assignee is being appointed who basically takes over your property to pay off and settle your liabilities. So whatsoever contracts were entered into by the insolvent person, though assignee was not a direct party to that contract, he is having the power to enforce the contract. So basically, this is your fourth exception to our general rule, that stranger cannot be the party to sue for the contract. Next is contracts entered through an agent. This is talking about principal agent relationship, under which it is necessary that 2 points should be clear. First, agent has acted within the scope of his authority. That is, he is acting within the power which are being provided by the principal. And second is, he is acting in the name of principal during the course of business. Now the contract was entered between the agent and the person, fine. But principal, though he is not a direct party to a contract, is having the power to enforce the contract. And the last is a charge on immovable property, under which I have given you the example of bank loan. Suppose I am having a housing loan, fine. So my property, though it is in my name, I am the real owner of that particular property, but till now I have taken a loan from XYZ Bank. So XYZ Bank is the financer and he is having a charge on my particular property. So in any case of default, it is having the right to take actions, though it is not direct party to the contract. So what we have studied today is a stranger cannot enforce the contract, but however, there are certain exceptions to this particular point. Friends, basically, we are having only 3 long questions in this particular topic of consideration. First was definition of consideration and essentials and valid elements of consideration. Second is what we had studied today, privity of contract and exceptions to the general rule. And third, that we are going to cover in our next lecture, no consideration, no contract and its exception. So basically, out of these topics, anyone is more likely to be asked. So I would request you to prepare each one of these 3 in much detail, because you can have any one of them as a long question in your examination. With this, I, CA Pujin Kapadia, thank you all for your patient listening and hope to see you soon in my upcoming lecture. Thank you, friends.